All right, so let's start exploring Southeast Asia. And we are going to be organizing this set of lectures more like we did with Central Asia. We're going to be focusing on countries and going through and discussing different themes in different countries. So rather than being organized by themes, this one is organized more by country. So, to set the context, of course, of where we have been, we just finished talking about South Asia, India, Pakistan, all of those places, and now we are moving to Southeast Asia. And then we're nearly done. Right? We'll do East Asia next, and then we will finish up with Australia and Oceania. But for the moment, here we are in Southeast Asia. So let's start labeling some things on the maps. I also included a map of the rivers, and we're not going to use that this semester. So you really just need to focus on this map. Setting the context, here's Bangladesh, there's China. This is the island of Taiwan, which I know that we have not talked about yet, but this is the island country of Taiwan right there. Okay. And then in terms of body of water, we just talked about the Bay of Bengal, or at least we labeled it. The Indian Ocean is off this way, and the Pacific Ocean is off to the east. Okay. There are a whole bunch of other bodies of water. Some of them are going to be identified in a couple of the videos that I've linked for you, especially one about Indonesia. You do not need to worry about those individual bodies of water within any of these countries. Okay, the only new body of water that you need to identify then is the South China Sea, which is here off the coast of the mainland peninsula. This is Vietnam. So the South China Sea is right here. And it's really important that you get this in your mind because it is incredibly geopolitically important right now. And we will talk about it when we get to East Asia, which is, of course, our next section. Okay? And so there are a lot of interests of the countries that are around the South China Sea here in Southeast Asia, and then also the Chinese interest. So that is why it is so geopolitically important. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of landforms we've seen before, right? We've got peninsulas, we've got archipelagos galore. There are thousands of islands here. We can see many of them. Many of them are very, very small, so we can't see them at this scale. But we have thousands of islands, all sorts of different chains. Many of these are volcanic chains of islands. We'll talk about that later. So we've got lots of peninsulas, lots of archipelagos. Those really are the dominant landforms of this area. And I want to make sure that you can see this region. Here is that arm of India that reaches over, right? And then we start the region here with Myanmar and stretch all the way down to half of this island. This is the island of New Guinea, and only the western half is in this region. Okay. We can also subdivide this region into two different chunks. We have the mainland Southeast Asia part, or sometimes it's called peninsular Southeast Asia. You can see why, right? The whole thing is a peninsula, and then there's a peninsula on the peninsula. The other part of Southeast Asia is called insular Southeast Asia. Insular means having to do with islands. It comes from the Latin word for island. And so we have insular Southeast Asia and we have mainland Southeast Asia. Okay. So let's label some countries. Oh, no, sorry, one more body of water. This is a lake, and it is a fascinating lake. We will talk about what makes it unique later in the set of lectures. It is called Tonle Sap, and it is almost right in the middle of Cambodia. Okay, so that's Tonle Sap. So there's the other body of water. Now let's label some countries. Here is Myanmar. Okay, and Myanmar kind of has a diamond shape and then a finger or a leg that extends down to its south. Okay, so there is Myanmar. This is a country formerly known as Burma. It is now known as Myanmar. Next to it, we have another country that has kind of a larger mass at the top and then an extension down to the south. This is Thailand. Next, we have Laos. And this is the only landlocked country in this region. And this is a smaller country. Unfortunately, it is struggling economically, but it is working on a lot of interesting development strategies, and we'll talk about one when we get there. This long country that extends along the eastern coast of the mainland, and it curves all the way up here from a large border that it shares with China all the way down. It touches Laos, it touches Cambodia, and then curves around. This is actually wildly disputed territory because there's a river. The Red River has its delta right here. Cambodia really feels like this should be their land. There actually was a large kingdom that was ruled here in Cambodia for a very long time that extended all the way across the region, and they feel that this land should be theirs. Vietnam disagrees, and at this time, Vietnam controls it. So Vietnam is this long extension here. And then here, this round one is Cambodia, which is handy because you can remember that because of the sea in Cambodia, right? It is round 2. So there's most of the mainland countries. There's still one more that we need to talk about, and that is Malaysia. And Malaysia is unique in this region because it is actually on both the mainland and on the islands. It has 2 parts. So there are 2 parts to Malaysia. Now, starting to look at the countries that are purely insular and that are made up of archipelagos here, we have this country. Notice that this island up here is not part of the Philippines. That is Taiwan. The Philippines stops here. So that is the Philippines. Then we have a very small country that is completely surrounded by Malaysia, and this is the Sultanate of Brunei. This is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, and we will talk briefly about it. Then we have another very small country that is right here. In fact, it's pretty much a city-state. That is Singapore. And when I say it's very small and pretty much a city-state, this is what I mean. This is Singapore. That's it. It's right here at the tip of the peninsula, and it really is just one big city. There are some more rural areas, but mostly it's just one big urban concentration. Then we've got the big one that dominates in terms of population. It dominates in terms of size, both of land and water. This is Indonesia, and it too is an archipelago. All right, other thing to label, last thing here that we really need to label, is this peninsula. And this is the Malay Peninsula, this extension of kind of this other peninsula here, right? It's the lower part. It has the tail of Myanmar. It also has the tail of Thailand. And then it has the western part, the mainland part of Malaysia. So that is the Malay Peninsula. You may recognize that name Malay from when we were talking about Madagascar, right, and the language that is found there. This is where those people came from, this area of the world. And this is an important, geopolitically important and geopolitically complex. It's shared by 3 people, 3 different countries, but it is also part of the bounds, the lands surrounding this narrow body of water right here between the Malay Peninsula and this large island. This is the island of Sumatra. Okay? And that is called the Strait of Malacca. And the Strait of Malacca is between the Malay Peninsula and the island of Sumatra. So right there, that is what a strait is. And then what a strait is a narrow, naturally formed channel of water that lies between 2 pieces of land. Okay? So you can kind of think of it as the opposite of an isthmus. Right? An isthmus is a narrow strip of land surrounded by water. This is a narrow strip of water surrounded by land. And a strait is usually navigable, so you can go through it with ships, and that is definitely true here. The Strait of Malacca is part of this waterway that goes through Southeast Asia and connects the areas to the west and China and the areas to the east. And this is a really important waterway because it's the best way to get through this area. The water through here down to the south of Indonesia is much more hazardous. The tides are more hazardous. There's a lot of small islands and reefs and coral, and so it can be very hazardous. So this is the much safer way to go. And this has been a vital waterway for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And with globalization and the emergence of Southeast Asia and economies, places like Vietnam, Thailand, especially Indonesia, Malaysia, it has only increased in importance because there's more trade and more vessels going through it per year. And some of it is Chinese manufactured goods and goods that are manufactured in this area going to other parts of the world. But we also have a whole lot of oil that comes through here. About 25% of the world's oil comes from the Persian Gulf, of course, and it reaches the rest of the world through here to a large degree. So this is a very important body of water and a very important waterway. Okay, I'm going to pause here and then we will come back and talk about a few cultural thoughts and the patterns of religion.